I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. At first, everything seemed perfect, happy, stable, a pretty typical suburban life. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and I genuinely thought we were in a good place. But over the last few months, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. She was more irritable, snapping at me over petty stuff, and then there was the sudden shift in her phone habits. She'd hide her messages even more than before, would be overly defensive if I asked about her texts or calls. She'd get aggressive if I ever tried to look at her phone, so I stopped. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It all came to a head when I decided to go through her emails. Stupid, I know, but I was desperate for answers. I wasn't snooping just to be nosy. I genuinely thought she might be hiding something. And that's when I saw it. There was an email thread from a week ago with the subject line "Meeting Tonight." It was from her to someone named Jake, a name I didn't recognize. I opened it out of curiosity, and what I read made my stomach drop. They were planning to meet, and from the tone, it was clear it wasn't just for coffee or some casual catch-up. They talked about getting together after therapy and used some pretty explicit language. My mind spun. Therapy. My wife, Lisa, and Jake, the facilitator of our infidelity support group. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I remembered how she had been acting in group, fidgety, sneaky, always trying to brush off certain questions. I never suspected she'd cheat on me with the guy leading our support group. That was supposed to be a safe space. The irony made me sick. I started digging a little more, checking her social media, her texts, her emails again. And sure enough, there was more. Flirty messages, late-night texts, pictures she'd sent him. She'd been lying to me this whole time, pretending everything was fine while she was sneaking around with him, our supposed therapist. I couldn't believe she could be so brazen, so utterly disrespectful. It wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown affair, and she didn't even seem to care about hiding it. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all of this? How did I not see the signs? I've been so wrapped up in trying to keep our marriage afloat, I never thought my wife would betray me with the very person supposed to help us fix things. It was a betrayal of the worst kind, twisted, dirty, and humiliating. I felt angry, betrayed, and deeply hurt, but mostly I felt so stupid for not seeing what was happening right under my nose. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how or what was coming next. The moment I figured it all out, I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at my phone, clutching it like it was some kind of weapon or maybe a shield. I kept going over everything I found, trying to find some explanation that would make sense, but all I saw was betrayal, plain and simple. Lisa, my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was cheating on me with Jake, the guy who was supposed to be helping us through our issues. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It felt like my world was collapsing. The worst part was how she responded when I finally confronted her. I remember finding her in the living room, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I just blurted out, "Lisa, I know what you've been doing. I saw the messages. You've been sleeping with Jake, haven't you?" Her face twisted, that typical bitchy smirk she's had since we got married. She looked at me like I was a joke. "Oh, so now you're spying on me? Nice. Real mature," she snapped, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting as usual. You don't have all the facts." I was so mad I could barely speak. "I have every damn message, every email. I know everything. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms. "It's none of your business. I was just talking to Jake. He's been listening to me. It's not what you think. You're paranoid," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. That's when I realized she was lying. She was lying through her teeth, trying to deny it, make me look crazy. But I knew better. I felt a rush of anger, but also a deep sadness. How could she do this? To me, to us. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, if I missed signs, if I wasn't enough. The pain was so raw I could hardly breathe. I wanted to lash out, to yell, to demand she tell me everything, but I held back. Instead, I told her she needed to leave, to get out of the house for a while. I told her I wasn't sure what would come next, but I couldn't stay in the same space with her anymore. That night, she packed her bags and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a shattered sense of trust. The days that followed were worse. I felt like I was living someone else's life. I kept replaying everything, wondering how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to what she was doing behind my back. I thought about the times she was short-tempered, the secretive phone calls, the little lies. I also kept thinking about how she denied it all, how she called me paranoid or insecure. But I knew the truth now, and it hit me like a freight train. My wife, was having sex with our therapist. Not just sex, but an affair that had been going on for who knows how long, right under my nose. I started planning how I was going to handle this, how I was going to confront her when she returned, or whether I should confront her at all. Every instinct I had told me to get revenge, to make her pay for what she'd done. But I was also torn up inside, feeling so betrayed and humiliated that I wasn't sure I even wanted her back. My mind was a mess, a whirlwind of fury, heartbreak, and confusion. I knew I needed to do something, but I didn't have a clear plan yet. All I knew was I'd never forget how she made me feel, how she betrayed the sanctity of our marriage with some sleazy affair with the guy who was supposed to help us fix things. And that's where I was, just waiting to figure out what to do next. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It's like all the frustration and hurt kept building up inside me, fueling this burning need for some kind of revenge. I wasn't just going to let her walk away and pretend it never happened. No, I needed her to see what she'd done, to understand the depth of her betrayal. I started plotting how I could turn this around, how I could make her regret ever crossing that line. At first, I thought about confronting Jake directly. I wanted to see his face when I told him I knew everything, but I realized that might backfire. I didn't want to escalate things or make her more defensive. Instead, I decided to gather more evidence, things she wouldn't be able to deny. I started digging through her emails again, looking for more proof, and I found that she'd been slipping up. She was careless sometimes, leaving her phone around, texting Jake in front of me, or making calls when she thought I wasn't watching. It was all so blatant now, like she wanted me to find out, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. One day, I remembered her mentioning a therapy session she had scheduled that week. That's when I decided to do something bold. I had heard rumors about her support group, how they all thought it was just a way to work through their issues, but apparently, Jake had been abusing that trust. I knew that Jake was still meeting with the group, probably under the guise of helping others, but I had a suspicion that he was also still seeing Lisa. I decided to set up a little trap. I told her I'd be working late one night, but I secretly slipped into her car with a small recording device, just to catch her if she slipped up again. The plan was simple but effective. I knew if she went to meet him, I'd catch her. I waited in the shadows, heart pounding, as she slipped out late that evening. Sure enough, she headed to some nearby hotel, and I parked around the corner, watching her through my phone's camera as she went inside. For a moment, I felt sick, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I didn't want to be that guy who stalks his wife, but I also knew I couldn't just let her get away with this. I had to see for myself how deep the betrayal went. When I listened to the recording later, my stomach turned. They were loud and obviously involved, talking about how they'd keep it secret, and she kept telling him how she needed this, like I was just some obstacle she was trying to get rid of. She was bitchy, full of lies, pretending to be the victim. All that heat and anger inside me boiled over. I knew I couldn't just sit around anymore. I had to do something to make her feel what she'd done to me, to make her see that I wasn't going to just accept this betrayal quietly. I wasn't sure what my next move was going to be, but I could feel it coming. The revenge was beginning to take shape in my mind, and I knew I'd find a way to make her regret every single lie, every secret, every moment she spent with him. That's what I was driven by now, this need to reclaim my dignity, to make her see what she'd lost. I was done being the victim. It was time to turn the tables. After I listened to that recording, everything changed. I felt this strange mix of disgust, anger, and a weird sense of clarity. She thought she was clever, sneaking off late at night, thinking she could keep it hidden forever. But I had her on tape, and that gave me a kind of power I didn't feel before. It wasn't just about catching her cheating. This was about reclaiming some control. I knew I couldn't just confront her outright and hope for the best. No, I had to play this smart, make her realize I wasn't going to be some naive fool anymore. So, I started planning my move. First, I contacted a lawyer, just to understand what my options were legally if I decided to file for divorce or take any other action. I knew I wanted to make her feel the weight of what she'd done, but I also didn't want to screw myself over in the process. I kept the recording hidden, just in case I needed it as leverage, and I started gathering a few more pieces of evidence, screenshots of messages, her traffic on social media, anything I could use if this thing went to court. Meanwhile, I played it cool at home. I stayed quiet, acting like I didn't know anything. I didn't want to tip her off that I was onto her. That would make her more cautious, more careful. I wanted her to keep slipping up, to make it obvious she was in way over her head. I also started talking to some friends, asking for advice. I wasn't ready to tell everyone, but I needed to get some perspective. Most of them told me to just confront her directly, but I knew better. That would just turn into a shouting match or worse. Then came the night I decided to do the final check. I told her I was going out for a drink with some friends. I wanted her to think I was clueless, and I followed her to that same hotel again. This time, I stayed in my car, watching her through my phone. She went in and I waited for what felt like forever. And then a car pulled up and Jake got out. They embraced, kissed, and headed inside together. I couldn't believe it. My wife in our bed, cheating on me with the guy who was supposed to help us, with all my trust still lingering in her. That moment was a punch to the gut. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about the fact she didn't even care enough to hide it well. I knew I had to do something drastic. I pulled out my phone and started recording again. I couldn't let this go. Not without making her see what she'd done. I thought about all the times I tried to be patient, understanding, to fix things. But she threw all that away for this. For some cheap sex and a lie that she thought she could keep going forever. When I finally went back home that night, I felt emptier than ever. I had the evidence, but what I really wanted was her to feel the weight of it all. I wanted her to realize she'd lost something real, something I'd fought so hard to keep. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd suddenly change. No, I had to be strategic. I had to make her see that I wasn't the fool anymore, that I knew everything. I started planning my next steps, whether to use everything I had as leverage or just to quietly walk away. Either way, I was done feeling powerless. I was ready for revenge, even if I didn't quite know what that looked like yet. The more I sat with everything I'd uncovered, the clearer it became that I couldn't just let this slide. I'd played nice, kept quiet, and hoped she'd come clean or somehow realize she was wrong. But she didn't. Instead, she doubled down on her lies, acting like she was the victim anytime I pressed her. I could see the bitchy smirk on her face when she lied, trying to manipulate the situation, pretending she didn't do anything wrong. And that's when I decided that enough was enough. I knew I had to make her feel what she'd done, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. I started reaching out to a lawyer I found, one who specialized in infidelity cases. I needed to understand what my legal rights were, what I could do if I decided to divorce her, or even if I wanted to use the evidence to pressure her into confessing. It was a cold, calculated move, but I wasn't about to let her get away with this. She lied to me, cheated on me, and taken my trust and shattered it all. She thought she could go on pretending, but I was determined to remind her she wasn't invincible. In the meantime, I kept her on her toes. I'd casually ask about her plans, make small comments about the support group, and watch her reactions. I wanted her to slip up, to get sloppy, and sure enough, one day she did. She was texting someone while I was in the same room. She thought I wasn't paying attention. I saw her quickly hide her phone, and the way her hands trembled slightly when she did it told me everything I needed to know. She was still lying, still trying to hide it. That was the moment I knew I had her cornered. I decided to set a trap. I told her I had a business trip coming up, but secretly I planned to follow her again. That night I parked around the block and watched her leave the house. She got into her car and I followed at a distance. She went to that same hotel where she met Jake. They were in the parking lot for a while, talking, probably about how she'd get rid of me or cover her tracks. Then they went inside together. When I finally got the recording, I felt a strange mixture of relief and fury. Seeing her with Jake, knowing she'd been lying to me for months, made my blood boil. But it also made me realize I couldn't go Back to how things were. I had all the proof I needed to destroy her, to rip her reputation apart if I wanted. The question was, what now? Do I blow everything up? Do I just cut her out and move on? I had options, and I was starting to see how far I was willing to go. I spent the next day just waiting to decide what to do with all this evidence. I knew I could threaten her with everything, or I could simply confront her again with everything laid out. Either way, I was done playing the fool. My heart hurt, my pride was wounded, but I refused to let her think she could get away with this. She'd betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I was ready to make her regret it. Whatever came next, I was prepared. I'd seen her true colors now, and I wasn't going to let her ruin me without a fight. That day, I made my decision. I sat her down, calmly but with a cold edge I'd never shown before. I played the recordings, the screenshots, everything I had collected. Her face twisted in anger and disbelief. As she realized I wasn't bluffing, that I knew every sneaky detail. She tried to deny it again, calling me paranoid and crazy, but I just looked her in the eyes and told her I was done trusting her. I told her that I was filing for divorce, that I was done being the victim of her lies and her betrayal. The look she gave me, so contemptuous, so dismissive, made my stomach turn. She spat back some bitchy remark about how I'd never be able to prove anything, how I was overreacting. But I laid everything out, how I had followed her, recorded her, found her in the act with Jake. Her face drained of color, and suddenly all her bravado disappeared. She knew she was cornered, that I had the upper hand now, and that she couldn't spin her way out of it anymore. From that moment, her attitude shifted. She started crying, trying to manipulate me with her tears, but I was immune to it. I told her I wasn't interested in her apologies, that she made her bed and now she had to lie in it. I told her she'd lost everything that mattered, our marriage, my trust, any shred of respect I once had for her. I was done pretending I could save this, done pretending I still loved her. The betrayal had broken something inside me I didn't think could be broken. In the days that followed, I moved out. I found a place, packed up some of my things, and disconnected from her completely. It wasn't easy. Every little thing reminded me of what she'd done, but I knew I had to take control of my life again. I also went to see a counselor, partly to process what I'd been through, partly to figure out how to rebuild myself after this mess. I realized I'd been naive, too trusting, but I also learned that sometimes love isn't enough when someone chooses to betray you so thoroughly. Looking back, I don't regret uncovering the truth. It hurt like hell, and I still feel the sting of betrayal. But I also feel a strange sense of relief, like I finally uncovered the mask she'd been hiding behind. I've learned that some people are capable of lying and cheating in ways you never expect, and you can't always fix what's broken. Sometimes, you just have to walk away, pick up the pieces, and rebuild your life from scratch. So here's what I want to say: trust your gut. When things feel off, don't ignore it. Sometimes the biggest betrayals happen when you least expect them, and they come from the people you're supposed to trust the most. And if you find yourself in a situation like this, don't hesitate to gather evidence, confront honestly, and do what you need to do to protect yourself. Because in the end, no one owes you more than honesty, especially not the people who claim to love you.